and welcome to our latest episode of PSN at Home. We are absolutely honored to have a firefighting legend with us today, Billy Goldfeder, who needs no real introduction and probably could take up the whole show just talking about his resume and accomplishments. But, currently Deputy Chief of Loveland Sims Fire Department, has served in Ohio and Loudoun County here where I am, and grew up in New York. Multiple committees with IAFC and National Fallen Firefighters, and the list goes on and on and on. And absolute pleasure to have you with us today. We're super excited to hear what you have to say, and I'm sure our listeners are as well.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Glad to be here.
So as everyone knows, I'm Jason Karp with the Public Safety Network, and I am here with my good friend and colleague, Terry Johnson Kennedy, otherwise known as TJ.
I love the fact that every week you seem to make up a new name for what TJ stands for. It's
one of these days we'll actually reveal what TJ means.
In a couple of years, maybe. We'll see.
Absolutely. So, but anyway, thank you again for joining. TJ, you want to kick it off and
sure.
Get these great insights going?
So as somebody who grew up in the fire service myself, starting with a volunteer department and then being lucky enough to become part of a career department and loved every minute of it, you were a legend even for all of us, reading the great advice that you would put out there. And I guess my first question for you, Billy, would be what advice would you give a new recruit coming out of the academy today, going into the fire service, about what they need to know? And I know you have your son and other family members in the fire service still today, but if somebody was 21 years old and she was coming out of the fire academy, what would you tell her?
You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use your ears, shut your mouth. Pay attention, listen, read, study, be curious, do as you're told, trust in your superiors, but mostly just listen. I mean, I'll be 65 years old in August, and I've been a firefighter since '73, and I'm still learning every day. And I don't mean that as a cliche. I mean, that's real. I attend webinars, I take classes, I go to trainings. Now, I don't go to class anymore on how to stretch a hose line, and nor do I know how to work the jaws of life. I kind of do as our boss always says, I stay in my lane. And really my responsibility at this stage of my career is overseeing firefighters operating in significant incidents such as a single-family, multifamily dwelling, a commercial building. It's all about fires for me. I respond on critical auto accidents, but that's primarily just to ensure nobody gets hurt. But at this stage in my life is that focus. And I guess my point of that is that chiefs, once you promote up, and I'll start at chief and work my way down, I guess. Once you promote up, you need to trust others to stretch that line, to vent that roof, to take out those windows. You need to now focus on your area of responsibility. That's command, control, and accountability. It's very easy to go back and do what we were comfortable doing. Well, if you're comfortable doing what you do, then don't promote up. But if you're going to be a chief in a buggy, you got to stay in the buggy, you got to stay at the command post, you got to run the incident. The next level down, of course, is the company officer. And we can talk about this whenever you want. But I continue and truly believe and can prove the most critical role in the fire service is the company officer, the lieutenant and the captain. Nothing happens without them. Now, I'm not minimizing the importance of firefighters, but the firefighters are the football players. We need good quarterbacks. And that's who we're talking about, the ability to communicate between the quarterback, and that's the captain or lieutenant, and the battalion chief or the chief that's running the incident, or during training, whatever. So stay in your lane is critical. And so to that young firefighter, when she asks the question, when I say 2 ears, 1 mouth, learn, study every day what you're expected to do. Well, how do I know what I'm expected to do? Look at the rig you ride on. And if you're not an expert on every piece of equipment on that rig, then you're not ready to go. So that's probably a good way to start. So
Terrific advice, and I love your point on the company officer. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the captain or lieutenant that is really leading that team into battle. Whether that's a car accident, whether that's a fire, whether that's other incidents, hazardous materials, things they deal with every day, and to some degree, they're responsible for that well-being. I mean, obviously, everyone on the crew is responsible, but at the end of the day, they follow a captain into that structure fire and follow the orders that are happening on that scene. And I think you've got to be curious. Your point about really understanding and asking, and I think that firefighting is just one of those fields where being curious is actually welcomed. There's so much to learn, to your point, and so many different things, and even the technology changes, constantly. There's some things that are the same, but there are many things that continue to improve and change, and it's just such an exciting time, I think, to be a firefighter today as it was when I started, when you started.
And just kind of turn it around too. It's also critical the organization understands the investment they must put in to that company officer. People in webinars and programs will say, well, what keeps chiefs up at night? I turn it around, and the statement needs to be, what helps a chief sleep well? And that's knowing that the captain at Engine 63 is a solid captain, and that captain is going to know what we need to do based upon our policies, our procedures, our traditions, our acceptable behaviors, our unacceptable behaviors, and that's who's going to be sort of managing that little whole. And the captain at that station can sometimes get frustrated about headquarters or this crew or that. You can't fix that. Focus on what you can fix, right? And what's the best you can do in that little world. And that goes for that little girl you talked about too when she joined the fire department. Don't worry about anything other than what your role is in that firehouse right now. We've got to be able to count on you. So it's really a big deal. We could do a whole program on the critical importance of company officers.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, taking that a little bit further, it's interesting, right? Because as you talk about the different roles within the fire service and within a particular fire station, and everyone's kind of got a role to play. But when you're in a management or role, an officer role, what's your suggestion or recommendation to agencies for how do you do that gap analysis? How do you ensure that your crew has the expertise they need to perform, each of the specific duties, going forward, and that to help them sleep at night? What are some of the processes? What are some of the approaches to take to make sure that is happening?
Well, that's the company officer's job, and then the battalion chief overseeing the multiple companies. But let's focus just on the company officer. And every day of training day, my partner Gordon Graham, we talk about that all the time. Every day a drill, every day stretch a line, every day throw a ladder. Basically, in addition to whatever your department's expecting you to do, work your way around the apparatus and starting with the front. Okay, thermal imaging camera. Today's thermal imaging camera day. We're going to watch a video. We're going to look at case studies where the use would have saved somebody's life, the failure to use one, things like that. Then next shift, we're going through this compartment here. That's our forcible entry tools. So today's forcible, it's really simple. All the shit you need is sitting right out there in the truck room floor in the apparatus. Just need to use it and do something with it. And that's what I recommend is again, you go out to my vehicle right now. All right, I've got a really cool Tahoe issued to me by the fire department. There's no hose on it. There's lots of pens, lots of radios, lots of command stuff. I'm an expert in all that, and I'm not bragging. I'm telling you because I'm expected to be an expert for the people that I supervise in the communities paying us to have some SMEs respond to fires. The public has a reasonable expectation that the people arriving in the fire truck actually know what they're doing. Well, the people arriving in the fire SUV are supposed to know what they're doing too. So again, I was down on our training grounds this morning, and we were joking about we're looking at a demonstration 110-foot ladder. Could I climb it? Yes. Is it my job? No, I'm not climbing a ladder. Well, you climb a ladder so you don't know what it's like. I remember what it's like. I don't need to do that. This is, though, how will that ladder impact us from a tactical standpoint? Is that the right ladder for our community? That kind of thing. But really, look at the vehicle you're expected to ride on. It may be multiple vehicles, and you need to be an expert on every piece of equipment that's inside that vehicle. To me, it's command, control, and accountability. That's all I do, and really all I've done since 1982 when I first became a chief. But it's ever evolving. I'm learning every day. I work in we run a very aggressive automatic mutual aid program amongst 7 or 8 towns in our area. And I'm older, obviously, than almost all these chiefs. But man, I'm learning from these guys all the time, and they're learning from me and all that. So it really never stops. But I'm not learning about putting a hole in the roof. That's the captain's job. If I want it vented, I tell the captain, get it vented. I'm not going to get involved in what saw and saber-tooth saw and this saw and that. I don't know one saw from another. That's their job. So that's kind of what I'm trying to draw. Now, I'm being a little bit theatrical. I mean, I know about saws and I know about nozzles and I know about flow, but that's not my concern. I want the captain to lose sleep over the flow and the venting and how easy it is to change the blade. That's kind of where my mindset is, if that fits into what you were talking about.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I mean, everyone's got a role to play, and it's so critical. I mean, we just saw this with the the LA fire, last week, an explosion, and just the tremendous work that those folks did, and anything can happen, right? I mean, and it's still an exceedingly dangerous job. So ensuring that there's a chain of command, ensuring that you are expert at your role is just critical. I think that's so important to emphasize. So appreciate the insights on that.
Yeah.
In this difficult time, Billy, with all that's been happening with COVID and the issues around departments and now the resulting impact to budgets from less sales tax revenue, especially at a municipal level, and affecting potentially state budgets. I know in the state that I'm in, they had over $1 billion surplus 3 months ago, and now they're expecting $1 billion deficit by the end of the year. It's going to have an impact on every fire department in one fashion or another. What's your perspective on this? What do you think is the realistic outlook? And then what are some of the things that we can do to help promote the best possible outcome for firefighters and for fire departments to be able to do what they do well? I mean, I grew up in a volunteer department that survived on a couple of fundraisers a year that I know have been canceled for the past few months. I know in my paid department, tax revenues were certainly a part of that and very critical. And so anyway, just give us a feel for what's happening in the fire service, what's being discussed today about this.
Yeah. So make sure you try to keep me focused on this, because I can go all over the place with this issue. I'm on my ADD and ADHD meds and all that, but it's still kind of can get me riled up. And I'm not, this is not a right wing or left wing issue at all. Where the hell did the money go? I just don't understand how a municipality can, where was your rainy day fund? Where was your backup? I mean, they say that more than half Americans only have $400 in savings to their name. That's like how our cities apparently are operating. And I was stunned. I also was personally stunned by the need for food for people in our communities. Every year our family makes a donation around the holidays. Basically, I have 16 immediate family members, including my grandkids. So my 6 grandkids and their parents, Terry and I, and our 2 kids that don't have kids, we always make a donation. And I was so moved by seeing so many people in line for meals and food and stuff like that. So, I mean, and I'll get back on subject in a minute, but if this is not a wake-up call for people to understand to live within their means and put money away, oh my gosh, it just makes me crazy. But then communities as well. Now, there's a part of me that thinks some cities are going to use this as an excuse to get rid of some things they don't want. Those whiny firefighters, those constantly bitching cops, those public works people who are always complaining and filing grievances. Let's not kid ourselves. This is an opportunity for mayors and folks to get rid of those problem children. And I'm sure that people are keeping their eyes and ears open about that. I just got word of a friend of mine who got laid off as a fire chief of a fairly influential community in Illinois today. And I'm like, something ain't right with that. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. So going beyond that, obviously fire chiefs have a responsibility. And here's the problem. So you're the chief and you put away $500,000 a year. The clowns at City Hall, or the City Hall dwellers, as I call them, will say, well, there's $500 you didn't use. And they take it out of your budget. We hope that between union and labor leaders, fire chiefs, and others, pay attention to that and the need. Now, many departments operate off property taxes, so if people don't lose their homes, they're probably going to be okay. It's more the cities that operate off sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
That's money in, money out. That's literally running your city paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not a smart idea to run your household paycheck to paycheck, although unfortunately, a lot of people are forced to do that for a variety of reasons. But running your city that way? I mean, weeks or almost days into the coronavirus, the city of Cincinnati furloughed 1,200 people. Why? Wait a minute. Where was the backup here? I'm not talking, it's not fire and rescue. This is, government workers. But it just struck me. And I have a lot of really good discussions with some friends and my boss and some others about this. And we're just kind of crazy over this whole situation. Now, let's go back to reality. The reality is this is how it is. Many cities are in dire straits right now.
Mm-hmm.
I heard on the news this morning, one in 4 Americans are applying for fiscal assistance, unemployment. So it's an issue. So what do fire departments do about that? Well, we always have had to take what we're given and make the most out of it by providing as many services as possible. And I know there's firefighters, public education, bullshit, this is bullshit, this is bullshit. You know what? Nobody asked you, unfortunately. This is not a vote. It's not a democracy. This is what we're going to do as an organization. And now it's about a business, a fire department or whatever, making sure that the community cannot live without them. And that's whether you're a business, whether you're a fire department. And I know it sounds funny, they couldn't live without the fire department. I understand that. But there's a big difference in 5 or 6 people in a firehouse and 1 or 2 people in a firehouse. The public's perception is as long as the fire truck's coming, we're fine. But the reality is the firefighters know, the chiefs know, the commissioners know, we can do a whole lot more when we got, instead of 1, when we have 2, instead of 2, we have 3, et cetera, on that apparatus. Mm-hmm. I'm worried they're going to start slicing that away. And there's a lot of buzz about it. There's a lot of pretty intelligent articles about it. I've not seen any significant layoffs or cuts yet, but we have to wait and see where that goes.
I'm going to just comment for a second on that. Yeah. I mean,
I want to go back and touch on volunteers in a minute when you're ready.
Yeah. No, we'll do that. So first of all, I agree. I think that the fear I have is all the hard work to get 2 in, 2 out, to have RIC teams, to have appropriate staffing for engine companies, could easily be eroded away in less than a year if we don't protect the safety of our firefighters. To your point, big red fire engine pulls up. People think that there's 4 or 5, 6 firefighters coming, and it may be 1 or 2, and that is certainly not the same thing, and it's certainly not a safe way to operate in most cases. And we need to make sure that we have the appropriate staffing to make that happen.
And just pause for 1 second. So if you're going to make a cut, make it clear to the fire department and the community then what the expectations are and what service you're going to get.
Correct.
Currently, I'm sending you 18 to 25 people on a house fire. In the future, I'm going to send you 8 to 10. Dear homeowners, understand, unless you support this next levy, unless you do this, unless you do that, your fire is going to be this much worse. And we got tons of data to prove it. It's not mysteries. Years ago, I was accused of holding up dead babies in front of council. Well, we didn't have a lot of data and information back then. Today, we can pretty much tell you, based upon our model, what that service is going to provide. So when we do look at a cut, I beg chiefs and others all the time, when they come out and say, well, it won't impact service. How can it not impact service? Then what have you been doing with all that money in the past? So you better make sure that your money matches your service. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you're right, Billy. And I think the point today is we have the data. I don't think most citizens understand this either, but we have the data to know exactly what the difference between a 3-minute, a 3.5 minute, a 4-minute response time for a first in company, a 5-minute, a 6-minute second in company. What does that do to a house fire? What does it do with all the plastics we have in our homes and furniture and other things today, and how quickly a fire burns versus how it burned 30 years ago when things were cotton and they were wool? I mean, we have data today from the laboratories on what happens with a structure fire and what is going to occur, to your point. And I hope that every department is focused on that data. These should be data-driven conversations. These are not just emotional. There's emotions, but there is the data to make a huge difference. And I encourage all of us to leverage that data for good. Let's leverage it to paint an honest picture of what's going to happen. And, there may be a choice to close a company, but you need to understand that your response times and the number of folks that are responding to your home or your business, 6 months from now versus today is going to be very different. And people don't worry about that until they have that fire, right? Or until something happens.
And it's responsibility of the fire chief, who's often put in a very difficult position, but that's why you're called the fire chief. You provide an A, B, and C plan. An A plan will give you the ultimate service based upon our available tax dollars. If you cut me, this is going to be the B plan. This is how much savings. And honestly, when you dig down to the numbers and they say they're going to close a company, if you figure out what the cost of that company is, it ends up being like a nickel a month per household. And the public's like, wait a minute, why are you making that cut? You know what I'm saying? So it's really no different than sitting down and your spouse, your partner looking at your homeowner's insurance, which actually Terry and I are doing right now, to decide whether or not this is the kind of service and the kind of plan you want. But understand, and odds are you're not going to need your homeowners until the bathtub floods upstairs, right? And you're going to find out what that value is. It's the same thing with the fire department. You're probably not going to need the fire department, okay? But you may. You're probably going to need us for EMS more so than a fire. But you may. So what do you want if that happens? And that has to be up to the public. The problem then goes to this. So you cut us back to nothing, but we still act like we got all the resources and all the people, because that's the nature of who we are. Your average firefighter is not going to, if you were for the garbage department, right, and they cut your garbage collection in half so it's only collected once a week, the garbage men ain't coming out on their own and collecting extra garbage because they give a shit. They're going to work. They're doing what's expected. There's no dedication there. I'm sure they're dedicated. I wouldn't want that job to save my life. But the difference is it's not an emergency service. With the fire department, if you take Engine 5 and reduce them from 4 firefighters to 2 firefighters, those 2 firefighters are still going to bust their ass, do everything they can, much to the point that they're going to get hurt. The people expecting service aren't going to get that service. It really is an unfair equation.
You are spot on, and you're hitting a really important issue, and it's really communication at 2 levels. And you've said that. And one, TJ's point and your point, so important that these agencies and the fire chiefs are collecting this data and communicating it to the local municipalities, their funding sources, local town councils, whoever is responsible for hearing that message. But even equally as important is then how does that message get out to the community? Because most communities, to your point, do not understand that, this got cut, the budget got cut, and they don't understand the potential impacts to themselves and what that means to the community for the very purpose you said, because, from an appearance perspective, firefighters and other first responders in public safety, they're very visible, they're committed, they're dedicated, and so it always feels like they've got your back, which is great. But we also have to be realistic about what that means, and it's incumbent upon, I think, these local governments to ensure that if they're going to make those cuts, that information has to get out to the communities.
So the answer is engagement. I had a city manager I worked for, a city mismanager we used to call. I worked for that was always jealous because of the relationship the fire department had with the community. Mm-hmm. We were always getting the kudos. They were always saying, fund the fire department, more fun. And we were well funded, believe me. And it used to make the guy crazy. But we were successful because we got out there in the community and we were engaged. We did birthday parties. We did drive-bys. We do, name it, we're there, okay? And that was, matter of fact, it was so funny that a new community was being developed in that city that I worked for one time. And in their brochure for new homes showed one of our fire trucks. Don't see that very often. And man,
that's great.
The guy off, man. He just went nuts on that one. But the point is, you can't sit behind closed doors, and this is nothing new. People well before me, the Brunos and the Ronnie Colemans and all those guys, for decades have been telling us, get out in the community, make it where they can't live without you. Not just emergency response, but the social aspect. Mm-hmm. Football games, standing by on Friday nights, let them see you. Hell, they own this equipment. Let them get out there and see it. You see kids on the street waving to you, stop. Pull over, wave, take pictures. Be an untiring salesperson for your fire department. And if not, then you see where the chips fall. But you got to put a little effort into it to make sure the community understands you're not just this service that shows up, but you're a part of their regular life every day. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and that's the fantastic words to live by, and hopefully agencies and folks listening to this are taking that to heart. I know we have a pretty active community here in Loudon, and I know in other places as well. But you just can't interact with the community enough, and it's going to help, especially in this time now of crisis and funding issues. It's going to be a big help for all of these agencies, I think, going forward.
If you're in a community that you're hearing buzz, here's the problem you're going to be up against now. If I lost my job, I don't have any sympathy for you. I've got a bigger challenge. So really, right now, is all the work you've done up until COVID going to be that investment? Because honestly, and I tell firefighters all the time, buy a piece of shit truck and drive it to work. Don't drive that $70,000 GMC truck and park it in the firehouse, right? I mean, we have really decent jobs, and for the most part, pretty well paid and stuff. And obviously, I'm picking on whoever drives whatever. But whatever the organization has done up until now, whether it's the Volunteer Association, whether it's the local union, whether it's the department as a whole, is now going to pay off. It's right now. This is as tough a time as we've had in our country in decades, right? So we'll see.
All right, well, terrific. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We have been speaking with Billy Goldfeder, who, legend, fire service legend, and we are going to continue with some additional episodes. So tune in to our next episode to hear further discussions and insights on volunteering and the future of the fire service. For now, I'm Jason Karp with TJ Kennedy. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.